Hey guys, Thomas Jr. here, aka Mustached Tom, here to review the movie Spirited. If you end up enjoying this full review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to my petition to help out smaller YouTubers, second and third to my Patreon and PayPal where you can help support me and my channel directly, and fourth to my Discord server where you can join and collab with other YouTubers and share your stuff there as well for free. And chilling will be reminded at the end of the review. With all that out of the way, let's get into the movie Spirited. So I saw the trailer for this about, 2 or 3 or 4 times, or something along those lines, as we are now encroaching upon the more holiday Christmas vibes. I figured as much, that this shift was gonna be inevitable, so here we are, already. So with that out of the way, let's get into it with our little plot summary. So the movie begins with some narration, starting off with Will Ferrell playing the ghost of Christmas Present, and he's talking about how in this little organization that he has, that they're all ghosts, and as they are attempting to change this beginning woman's grumpiness, she goes through the Ghost of Christmas Future, which does the pointing towards a coffin, in which she sees the error of her ways, and when she awakens in the next bit, she goes off and celebrates and does the whole, Scrooge thing, essentially, which does come into play in this movie. So, after their little success, Present, who's played by Will Ferrell on the left there, and his crew do a little musical. So this is a musical numbered, musical movie. So, as we are offered a little more insight, we also see the spirit of Jacob. Now, this was an early indication that this was a sequel of sorts of things to come, and I'll keep putting that little note there. All the while, the ghost of Christmas Present, I'll just keep calling him Present, he's considering retiring, and apparently when you retire, the reward is getting another chance to live from that ghostly bond, I guess. But he doesn't go through it quite yet. And as they're trying to pick out their new haunt, as they call it, they bump into Clint, played by Ryan Reynolds. He turns out to be this sort of super salesman in the modern times. And we learn from his case file, how they represented, is that he's what they call in the business of this ghostly haunt an irredeemable. I think that is a very confusing title to give a person that you're trying to change. I think that's a little bit of a misuse of the word irredeemable or unredeemable. You would probably save that for people who are, as his character literally puts it in the movie, like the killers and all the bad people, and so forth and so forth, right? But he's just an asshole, a business asshole. So, again, unredeemable, probably the incorrect use of the word, though again, I'm trying to think of a word that is just, that could be replaced with asshole, and I'm struggling to figure out what that would be called, but, something along those lines I think would probably be what they could have gone with, but whatever. Small nitpick on the word. Anyway. Anyway, so after President places his threat to retire, he sings about it to Jacob. All the while, we see more of Clint representing what kind of character he is, as not too fond of his sister. So he wants to focus on this guy. And thus, we get a little bit of, forceful, quid pro quo here of oh, I guess we're taking on this thing after all, or we're not, but we are actually. And he does briefly appear, President does, during his little investigation about this woman who he's become infatuated with. Jimmy Kimmel makes a cameo appearance in this movie for some reason about this business news update thing. However, as Clint is making his preparations more so involved, everyone abruptly vanishes, and the Chain Man appears, or Jacob in the chains and all that stuff, and he sings about threatening how the ghosts are going to come and haunt him. So, he's off put by that, but then the ghost of Christmas past comes in. And all the while, we also see that the ghost of Christmas future wants to do a little bit more. He talks about all he's able to do during these haunts is able to point at the coffin. And he keeps saying that he wants to say some sort of cheesy one-liner throughout the beginning portion of this movie. It seems to be his whole ordeal. All the while, so as the past comes in, let's just say Clint and her get a little bit clingy off screen, according to her, as she sort of gives her burden to the present ghost after fooling around, if you catch my drift. I don't even know how that works, but because one of them's a ghost and one of them's not a ghost, so I don't know, Ghostbusters stuff, when that one scene happened, I don't know. Anyway, or maybe it's the present one where he's or at least visible to one person. I don't know if that also meant tangible to that one person or not, but again, I don't know. Who knows the rules of this world? I don't, clearly. Anyway, so, as I mentioned, Present takes the job, and he brings Clint back in time to to an earlier Christmas, where he was offered as a child the idea of having a dog versus having no dog. And the mom excused that the dog ran away instead of, never having bought one in the first place. And Clint goes on about how that actually helped him become, this sort of sleazy business owner, so how he's actually proud of that moment, or happiest about that moment, as he puts it. So, after that, he's the president is threatening to bring him elsewhere, so he does. He brings him to the hospital. And this is where he goes through an ordeal that he's not yet prepared for, so he runs off and he ends up into a door that leads straight to the afterlife where all the other ghosts are. So, Clint is able to finagle his way through, and he mentions the comment section, which is, I guess it's supposed to be some sort of bizarre meta joke that I'm not aware of, which pisses him off to the extent of having Present pull him even further back into the past. And this is where he reveals that back in that day, he used to be Scrooge. So yes, this is apparently a sequel of sorts to the beloved classic of the story of Scrooge and him being visited by the three ghosts. And now Scrooge, who is now present in this movie, he was, again, what they called an irredeemable or unredeemable character. And how he went on to do the good stuff later on in that movie. Right at the end. So, as Clint is actually trying to exchange more information out of Present there, aka Scrooge, he learns about how he died. Not too far into the distant future, apparently, based off of the information. But Clint sings about it, or sings about a separate song, considering what one of the characters says being good afternoon, and apparently according to him, this used to be a slang curse word or whatever. I don't know. But it's a whole song, and it goes on for a bit. So Jacob forces the ghost of Christmas Present to go back on the script, so he dresses up all like Christmas Present is typically seen in that more jollier costume. But he keeps getting nudged in other directions as he meets with briefly sees his crush again, and even tries to offer some insight into the sister. We have another song with Clint singing back against the ghost of Present, and as he's trying to consistently push back against, he is flung into another flashback, the one he ran away from last time when he learned something. Anyway, so Clint tries to force Present to stay, or rather to retire, kind of like vexing him on in a way. But he goes on about how he doesn't feel like he's not been redeemed himself after all this time, even despite all the times he's apparently helped others in change. He does not know if he himself has really, really changed all that much. And that is why, and he offers his reasoning as to why he even picked Clint in the first place, and that being, if he felt that he could change another unredeemable like himself, that would mean something more, that one was worth it in comparison. So as they're in this little elevator, they joke about Tiny Tim, or misremembering his name anyway. We then cut to Kim, who quits on Clint after being, because her whole ordeal is she was forced, or as a part of her job technically, under Clint, to dig up some research after he was sort of coerced into helping his niece win the student president election thingy-majig. And she was running against some boy, and she was like, "Oh, he's so nice and all this stuff," and forget it. And he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna help you anyways. Dig up some dirt on him, Kim." She does so. It's posted, and then he kind of gets laughed at, scoffed at in the AKA cancelled in the year 2022, and that's how easy it is. So she quits after almost going through that. And after the fact, follows, and Clint, after the whole future part, which I didn't write in my notes here, is that after President leaves very briefly when he retires, the featured one comes and he shows that the kid passed away from the being cancelled part. So some pretty dark humor implied there as to the offset of what would have led to that. Anyway, so he wants to change that one significant thing, so he does. He makes it back to the ice skate rink in the present, and it changes, shifts what the girl was about to do. His niece saves her, follows present along in the real world since they're both alive. And just about, and present is about like, I'm not ready for this world, I haven't been. And Clint saves him after the fact. And so, after being saved, the two of them sing a little duet. And they are joined by all the other ghosts about how, because this is what was also implied at the beginning, is that like whenever a haunt is over, all the ghosts will appear in front of the person being saved, or changed in this case, and doing a little musical after or during it. After their little musical, however, Clint gets hit by the bus, and he dies. That's not a joke, he literally ends up as a ghost himself. He finally sees his sister, which was implied throughout the movie that she had passed away at some point. And Clint takes on the job of Ghost of Christmas Present based off of the little end bit here. And they sing a little reprise or another song during the credits. And that was the movie Spirited. So this was an interesting one, as I was thinking in my backlog of my brain of like, there has been a lot of like Scrooge, retellings, but I don't ever recall there being like a spiritual sort of sequel to that type of movie before. And this seems to be like the closest thing. Again, I could just be misremembering because there are how many versions of that story there are. There could have been one that was a sequel as well, but I don't remember off the top of my head. Anyways, I found that quite fascinating. I'll also argue that this is one of Ryan Reynolds' best, or better roles, I should say. I would challenge that it's not quite as taxing as, say, what I would call his best role in a movie, which is in Buried, which pushed the actor to his limits, of his acting limits, I would say. Whereas this is a little bit of more, we see the musical side of the actor, as well as his dancing capabilities, as well as Will Ferrell's and all the other people who get to do a little musical number. So yeah, I think this is one of his stronger movies from that perspective. I think that he plays himself outside of that little bit pretty to a T, And Will Ferrell does go on his bit a little bit towards the end of the movie, which is a typical little freak out moment, I guess is what I would call it, or refer to it as. But yeah, the musical numbers are fun. There are some, rules of the world that don't make too much sense about like how you interact when you're a ghost with things in the world at the beginning, kind of there implied. And yeah, my notes weren't super strong on that one because I almost nearly missed the whole bit about Kim's whole side thing, at least in my notes, which is why I had to remind myself to point that out. And yeah, but otherwise, a neat little flick, I would say. I'd probably give it like a 6 out of 10. Because of the slightly strange world building at the beginning there. Again, it's not too distracting, it's just like it raises a bit of questions about like, I don't know. Anyway, outside of that, still a pretty solid movie, I would say. Pretty decent musical, all things considered. And yeah, that's that. That's my review of Spirited. So if you ended up enjoying it, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out those links in the description. 1, to head over to my petition. 2nd, 3rd, to my Patreon and PayPal. And 4th, to my Discord server. Any and all donations are greatly appreciated. And until next time, everyone, bye-bye.